This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global at the weigh-in here for Allen versus Brown, main event at the O2 tomorrow night. Our little campaign worked. I know you were kind of a little bit undecided when we last spoke, but the right decision for Dave Allen to be headlining tomorrow night?
Listen, as I've said before, this is a fantastic show from top to bottom. It's a terrific card. It's a great night at the O2. And yeah, listen, we give David Allen his name in lights and as the nominal main event. But look, all the other fights could have been main event on cards. You've got the Great British title fight with Joe Cordina and Andy Townend. That's a terrific fight. Fantastic to see Josh Kelly in with a good, unbeaten opponent. Conor Benn back, always livens up any bill. You've got the likes of Shannon Courtney, White Chocolate as well, over from America. And then the two heavyweight fights are both good fights. You know, Derek Chisora, terrific, wonderful to have him back. He gave everything, didn't he, against Dillian Whyte just before Christmas until the knockout. Back under Dave Colwell's tutelage, it'd be very interesting to see how they've meshed as a unit, as a pair, up in Rotherham. Gashi is a good opponent, a live opponent. He's had plenty of notice, so that's an excellent heavyweight fight and a great double header with David Allen going last against Lucas Brown. Big puncher as always from Australia. We'll make it lively, but you know, if David Allen comes through, let's see where it takes him. It's a great story. We know the Allen story. You know, it is almost like reality television, isn't it? With Dave, he's a great character for the sport. Everyone that sparred with him says he's a great fighter. You know, the likes of Tyson Fury and all the other big heavyweight names have a lot of respect for Allen. The country seems to love him. He'll get a great ovation at the O2. But it's business time for him. He's got to take it seriously. I think he has under Darren Barker. And he needs a really good performance now to see what we're going to do with him.
Interesting, the Dave Allen story. You know, on many a times Dave hasn't kind of kept to his side of the bargain and delivered. But I think, make no secret of it, Eddie has a soft spot for him, and his kind of likability and his popularity has kind of got him into certain positions where in other cases he may have not have got, and that's the reality of it.
That is the reality, but he's also a heavyweight, and he's a heavyweight with fun. So I think, you know, you put those ingredients together, and he can box. You know, he's not bad. We're not saying he's going to become world champion, but he's decent. He's okay. He just needs to get his life in order. He needs to get himself sorted. And I think physically, you know, he said at the press conference yesterday that, you know, he'd hardly trained for most of those fights last year. This year he's got to take it seriously. I think, you know, Eddie has given him opportunities. I think we all are. But I think if he blows another one, that may run out. So he needs to take this, and I think he's taken this fight seriously. And he needs to. Lucas Brown didn't put in a great performance last time, but he is very dangerous. He's very heavy-handed. He's lighter. He's coming to win. He knows that he's one or two fights away from a big fight, as with anything in this heavyweight division, as we've seen this week with Jerome Miller and all the news there. And you know, they're not far away from big fights. Big David Price winning the other night. You know, he wants the winner of Allen and Brown, which would be a good one to make. So it's a really important fight. All the heavyweight fights are at the moment. Derek Chisora throwing his name into the ring for as an opponent for Anthony Joshua, which might seem a bit ludicrous because he's come off the knockout defeat to Dillian. But, you know, the big guys have all got to fight people, and you know, with the heavyweight landscape as it is, you are 1, 2, 3 fights away from a big challenge. So the name of the game is to keep winning and winning when you've got a big platform. And David Allen has a big platform on Saturday night. There'll be a packed O2 live on Sky. If he puts in a great performance, who knows? And 2 or 3 more of those, let's see what we do with him.
Adam, I know we briefly obviously spoke yesterday with Eddie about this mind-blowing situation. Say mind-blowing, it's just, you know, 7 weeks out from the fight, it wasn't an ideal situation for anyone. But with the fight being in America, where does kind of the pressure lie with this? Is it more on DAZN or with Sky? Obviously, you've got a duty to your customers here, and DAZN obviously showing the fight in America, and the fight is in America. But pressure-wise, where does that kind of sit?
Well, listen, a Sky box office event has got to be a Sky box office event. It's got to be a great night, and you're absolutely right. We care about our customers more than anything, and that's the most important thing with all of this. We're all disappointed. You know, Jerome Miller, unbeaten. Obviously very good talker, Brooklyn boy. It just all sort of made sense for AJ's American debut at the Garden. But you know, the Vada testing's there for a reason. He's failed the A sample. Let's see what happens in the coming days with the B sample. But if that goes like the A sample, then obviously there has to be a new opponent announced, and probably next week, as Eddie said. It's very important from our point of view that we get somebody that is right for the night, that is right for Team Joshua. You know, Robert McCracken's got to have a look. It's 6 weeks out. Yes, it's not the Pulev-Takam situation at sort of 10 days, and no one has been put sort of on standby for that, but there are a number of heavyweights that have been mentioned, and we need to make sure that it's the right one. I personally would like Luis Ortiz, but, you know, I hear that it may be too short notice for him. Obviously, there's huge money involved, and, you know, will Rob want that? Will Team Joshua want that? A big, you know, southpaw, hard-hitting southpaw, a very different style to Jerome Miller. So that's important, you know. Joshua's training for one style. Jerome Miller's sort of unlike anyone else, really. So, and there is time to readjust. But, yes, I think it has to be the right opponent, and Eddie's working very hard on making sure that is right. And, yes, it's important that we're happy. And of course, it's important that others are happy too, whether it's the Joshua team and DAZN over there. But for us, we care about our customers and want to make sure that it's a great box office night. But yes, AJ making his American debut is huge on June the 1st. We know Katie Taylor will be going for that final piece in the jigsaw to become undisputed lightweight champion, which is incredible. There'll be a stacked, stellar card on June the 1st. But the most important thing over the coming days is to get the right opponent for Joshua and the right opponent for Sky Sports box office.
I've seen a few people within boxing saying that Jerome Miller should be banned for life. From a broadcast point of view, I'm assuming you can't really kind of take that standpoint. And does that kind of your broadcast eyes, is it over kind of see what you believe is right? Because you can't say that Jerome Miller shouldn't be able to fight again or even fight on Sky again, because there's people on this card that have failed drug tests, and we're talking about people like Luis Ortiz and even Manuel Charr that have failed drug tests as potential opponents for Anthony Joshua. So how does that kind of cloud your judgment into what you believe is right and wrong from a kind of broadcast and a moral point of view?
Sure, it's a tricky one, of course it is, but we're not a commission. You know, we don't put the rules in. You know, ultimately the matches are made by the promoters, and they have insisted, or whether it was Anthony or Jarrell's team, whatever, Vada testing was insisted on this. I totally agree with that. And as I said to Eddie, I think Vada testing should be, you know, much more widely used within boxing, within our sport, to clean it up as much as possible. Everybody wants that. But as Eddie was saying yesterday, the huge money that it does cost for Vada testing for each and every fight is a difficult one. But there seems to be a lot of money flying around boxing at the moment. And I think that, first of all, we should try and make that. Certainly the big fights have got it. But it's crucial that we have Vada testing to make it as fair a playing field as possible and as clean a sport as we can. But we are not the governing bodies. That is not our responsibility. So we, like everyone else, like you, like all the fans, disappointed that this happened this week. It's not our fault. This is Jerome Miller and the Vada testing, and he has failed a test. Let's wait for the B sample, etc. But we can't really judge that. The New York Commission, that's their job to say he can't fight in New York. If the B sample, by some sort of miraculous decision, is fine, then things will change. But if it is not, and if he fails on that, then the New York Commission won't let him fight. He will obviously serve some sort of a suspension or ban. And at that point, we obviously don't use Jerome Miller. But as far as the future goes, as you know, fighters have come back from failed tests. There's all sorts of grey areas within this. But we have got to make sure that we do everything right from our point of view to make sure that the fighters are clean, and that if the commission is saying he cannot fight because of the failed Vada test, that is exactly right, and that's what we've got to go with. So it is difficult, and from a moral point of view, not you, not me, not any boxing fan wants drugs in this sport. But I think it's very difficult for us to say, oh, we can't have Jerome Miller ever again or whatever, because as you know, the sport moves quickly, and if fighters, you know, serve their bans, and there could be all sorts of ways, you know, you fail a drugs test, but he's already come out and said, it wasn't me, I'm totally clean, you know, my team is honest and we're integral and all the rest of it. So, you know, there are always sides to every story. It's the commission's job and the Vada testing's job to make sure that we get the right outcome. as best as we can, and the right outcome at the moment looks like that unless the B sample is different, Jerome Miller will not be allowed to fight on June the 1st. We need to work very hard to make sure that Eddie gets the right opponent for Anthony Joshua for that date, for Sky Sports box office, and it's one step at a time, and who knows what will happen with Jerome Miller beyond that, but that's for his team and himself to deal with.
When you're considering and discussing potential opponents as a replacement on June the 1st, does it come into consideration fighters that have failed tests being considered? Is that looked at? Do you think, do we want to replace someone who's failed a test with someone who has failed a test before? Do you talk about that, or doesn't that really come into it for June the 1st?
Again, it's a really difficult subject because ultimately it's not our job to say, you know, Anthony Joshua is fighting X, Y, and Z. That's Eddie's job. You know, he's got to make the fights happen for us. We've got to agree. We've got to obviously make sure that the opponent is up to the standard that we want, and that the fight is appealing, and that the whole night is appealing for a Sky Sports box office event, because that's what it is. Anthony Joshua in New York, launching the American adventure. But of course, we want him in with somebody who's going to test him, who's going to be a good opponent, a good challenge, and at 6.5 weeks' notice, you know, has the chance to become world heavyweight champion. But no, if a fighter is you know, the fighters that are being looked at, it's basically, you know, they are there because they're allowed to fight, and that again is not our responsibility or decision, because if they failed drugs tests before, that is up to the commission to decide whether to license them in their particular jurisdiction, and we've got to go with that.
Just one final one, because I know the weigh-in's just getting fired up.
It's disappointing. Obviously, it's disappointing when any fighter fails a drugs test. You know, and in any sport, we don't want drugs in sport. We want a clean sport. But obviously, sometimes there are areas. There's you know, I mean, look at other fighters that have said that they've had their food, their drink spiked. They've had all sorts of excuses. You know, do you buy those? Do you not? Ultimately, it's down to how long they serve and whether they can come back, and obviously repeat offences and all that have got to be looked at. But you and I and every fight fan out there wants a clean sport.
I'm ready to